Depends on the workshop, so. Which we want to talk about. You guys ready? Well, good evening, everyone. It is 6 p.m. and I'll call this meeting to order. This is the July 2nd, 2025 regular meeting of the Schertz Planning and Zoning Commission. Item number 1 was the call to order. Item number 2 is to seat alternates. We've had a couple of changes up here. Ms. Goldick is now an alternate, and she's joining us this evening. Mr. Hughes and Mr. Wallace are now full-timers. So, all right, hearing of residents. Did anybody sign up? Nobody? Oh, okay. All righty. Yep, nobody. Okay. No emails or anything like that? Okay. All righty, item number 4 is our consent agenda. We have one item. Item 4A is the minutes from the June 4th, 2025 regular meeting. There's no discussion on the consent agenda. We need to pull this item for discussion. No. If not, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
It was Commissioner Wallace, correct? Okay. All right. Again, there's no discussion on the consent agenda. I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. So if you would, please record your votes. I have 6 votes. Can you publish that for us, please? I have 6 ayes and none opposed. That motion passes. Item number 5, a public hearing. Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing related to zone change requests, specific use permit requests, and Unified Development Code amendments within this agenda. The public hearing will be open to receive a report from staff, the applicant, the adjoining property owners affected by the applicant's request, and any other interested persons. On completion, the public hearing will be closed. The commission will discuss and consider the application and may request additional information from staff or the applicant if required. After deliberation, the commission is asked to consider and act upon the following requests and make a recommendation to the City Council if necessary. Item 5A is PLZC 2025-0094. Hold a public hearing and make a recommendation on a request to rezone approximately 4.64 acres of land from General Business District GB to General Business District 2, GB2, generally known as 36 Maskey Road and 40 Maskey Road, lots 1 and 2, Block 1, of the Maskey Road Business Park subdivision, more specifically known as Guadalupe County Property Identification Numbers 199114 and 199115. Sir.
Good evening, Commission. PLZC 2025-0094, proposed zone change to GB2 on Maskey Road, Willingham Planner. So if you think you may have seen this before, it is because it is a very similar application to the one that came approximately 2 months ago for the lots directly adjacent to this property. They're making the same request. So this is the aerial view of the property. It's currently undeveloped at this time, as well as the adjacent properties, except for to the south, you see some of that office warehouse development, and it's currently zoned as GB at this time. Adjacent properties are either GB or GB2. 10 public notices were sent out for this property. Only one response was received in favor of this property. A public hearing notice will be placed in the San Antonio Express prior to City Council. A notification sign was placed on the property by the applicant, and JBSA has been notified and affirmatively recommends approval of this request. So once again, this is just another exhibit of the zone change. So we see it's currently GB changing to GB2. The site in context, it is currently located within the APZ2. The purpose of the APZ is to ensure that there's compatibility between JBSA Randolph and the city of Schertz, just making sure that there's compatible uses under that area that's below the runway flight line. So the purpose and effect of the APZ, so UDC section 2159 special district specifically outlines that JBSA must affirmatively recommend approval of the zone change request before the city can take this application. And so we require that letter there that you see on the top side where the verbiage states JBSA affirmatively recommends approval of the zone change. If we do not have this letter, we cannot move forward with this application. So the site in context, just once again, this is located in a relatively undeveloped area at this time. You can see the current conditions. There's nothing there at this moment. Neither is there anything across the street on Maskey Road. But you can see kind of to the south in that aerial view that, you know, this area is lending itself to office warehouse uses. Zoning district requirements. So the dimensional requirements are actually the same from GB to GB2. And of course, the primary difference between GB and GB2 is just some more intense uses that we see kind of to allow that office warehouse is the most common requirement that people are looking for when they make this zone change request. And it is the applicant intent to have office warehouse at this development. So UDC section 2154D, criteria for approval, whether the proposed zone change implements the policies adopted by the comprehensive land plan or any other applicable adopted plans. So the comprehensive land plan is a guiding document for the long-range vision of the city. This area is currently designated as industrial hub, which is of course intended for manufacturing, processing, distributing, and GB2 is intended for similar uses of light industrial developments to serve the entire community, which tends to be compatible with industrial hub. 2, whether the proposed zone change promotes the health, safety, and welfare of the city. So as I was discussing before, as part of promoting the health, safety, and welfare, the city should encourage development compatible with surrounding uses, utilizing standards and traditional uses to alleviate negative impacts. So that is the purpose of the APZ. And as I mentioned before, JBSA has affirmatively recommended approval of this request. Whether the uses permitted by the proposed zone change will be consistent and appropriate with the area's existing uses in the immediate area. So as I mentioned before, this area is currently GB, lending itself to GB2. We already saw that application come in recently that was making the similar request, and we did approve that application. So the subject property is located around, other properties that are zone GB2. And whether other factors are deemed relevant and important in the consideration of this amendment. So all UDC requirements have been met for this proposed zone change request. And the Schertz Fire, EMS, and police departments have been notified of the zone change request and have provided no objections. Staff recommendation, due to the character of the surrounding area, the consistency with the comprehensive land plan, and the affirmative recommendation of the proposed zone change from JBSA, staff is recommending approval of PLZC 2025-0094. I'm available for questions.
All right, thank you. The applicant here tonight?
The applicant is not here tonight. No.
Okay. All righty. This is a public hearing. It is, stop looking at that clock and look over here. It is 6:08 p.m. and I'll open the floor for public comment. Anyone wishing to address the commission on this topic is welcome to step forward. Nobody? Big crowd tonight, right? All right, nobody at all. All right, it is still 6:08 p.m. and public input is closed. Before I open it up to commissioners, I'm a little surprised that the applicant didn't care enough to show up this evening and represent themselves. Okay? Do they really think it's that easy?
The applicant knows. I informed them. So they have the notification. Go ahead.
And I would say it's not, technically, it's not a legal requirement for them to come, and I would say the weather has been kind of rough the last several hours, so that may have played. The property owner has come in several times
Yes.
to talk about the case, is very committed. He actually came on the last case, wasn't he?
Yes, he was here at the last case for the
So,
similar request.
I would
Well-
say the weather is probably playing.
Okay. I just don't want to get to the point where they take us for granted.
Yeah,
You
and I
know.
will say, when we send the agenda out to the commission, we send emails to every applicant encouraging them to come.
All righty. Commissioners, anybody have any questions or comments? Nobody has any concerns with going from GB to GB2? Maybe it is that easy, I don't know. Well, thank you for pointing out at the beginning of your, that we just did the 2 lots to the, yeah,
Right
whatever,
across.
yeah, whatever that site is. And I certainly think it fits with what else is going on down there. And the GB lot to the left on the picture, that still has the SUP on it, right? For a convenience store with gas pumps. Okay. All right, well, if nobody has anything, this is a recommendation to City Council. We can recommend approval, denial, or approval with conditions. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve PLZC 2025-0094.
Second.
I have a motion to recommend approval of PLZC 2025-0094 from Commissioner Goldick, a second from Commissioner Wallace. Any further questions, discussion? If not, please record your vote. All right, I see 6 votes. Would you publish that, please? We have 6 ayes, none opposed. That motion passes. Thank you. Item number 6. Items for individual consideration. We have a single item, 6A, is PLVAR 2025-0144 sign waiver. Consider and act upon a request for a waiver in relation to wall signage for the Home Depot on Lot 10, Block 1 of the Schertz Station subdivision, approximately 18.709 acres of land located at 18541 Rips Chrysler Road, Schertz, Texas, 78154, more specifically known as Guadalupe County Parcel Identification Number 68313. Sir?
Thank you, Commissioners. This is PLVAR 2025-0144, Samuel Haas, Senior Planner. A little background here. This is our first sign waiver request. So this is a new thing as of June 17th. Ordinance 25S024 was passed. That was a bunch of changes to our sign code in Article 11. Including in those changes was Section 211115, which is waivers. So any applicant can request a waiver from the requirements, and that is decided on here at Planning and Zoning. So this is not a recommendation, this is an actual decision here. If the applicant is not happy with how you've ruled, they can appeal. That does go to City Council. But ultimately, the final action is still here. So just want to clarify that. So because the changes are so new, just kind of a refresher here. So the way that we have previously treated wall signs is we gave them, we permitted a specific wall sign and we measured it and we had the requirements for that. Well, now it's a little different. For wall signs, we look at the entire facade and we give businesses an allotment of square footage. So for instance, on interstate and farm to market roads, you get 250 square feet for a wall sign. You can use it for one giant wall sign, or you can split it up, have little icons or whatever you want to do. It's kind of up to you. So that's how it was recently approved and changed. So you'll see down here at the bottom, there's Two little requirements that I included in this. Roadway classification is determined by the address of the building. And then number two, buildings over 100,000 square foot get an additional 100 square feet. So for interstates, you get 350. For all other roads, get 200. So that brings us to Home Depot. So this is part of the Schertz Station subdivision, the large multi-mixed-use subdivision that's going in on Cibolo Valley Drive and I-35. This is Lot 10, Block 1. They are zone PDD, and the address for Home Depot, as Commissioner Outlaw mentioned, is 18541 Ribs Chrysler. So, and Home Depot is also constructing a 130,000 square foot facility. So under the current codes, Home Depot is classified because of that Ribs Chrysler as an all others. I'll go back to that, right? So it's not an interstate, it's not a farm to market road. So they get 100 square feet of signage. Because they're building a large building over 100,000 square feet, they get an additional 100 square feet. So they're allowed 200 square feet per facade, 3 out of 4 facades, however they want to do it. The applicant is requesting a waiver to allow more signage on the front facade. They are requesting 580 square feet. So that's 580 square feet for the entire facade. They can split it up how they want to do it. So a couple considerations in that 2111B, kind of like how we do the criteria for approval for a lot of the other things. This is kind of the sign waivers criteria, or what we're calling the considerations. So number one, the nature of the proposed use of land. So this is a large, effectively kind of a mixed use subdivision here. And you'll see this is a graphic from, I believe, I think it might be the developer's site, but you can see kind of how the anchor tenant, this Home Depot site, sits back away from the I-35. And so you'll see there's a bunch of pad sites and buildings that are going to be in front as well. Number two, the location of the property in relation to roadway classifications. It's difficult to see here, but you'll see in the graphic that there are quite a few public roadways that are splitting this subdivision. You'll see there's Pullman Drive, Merritt Lane, Station Road, and then Ribs Chrysler as well. Also Cibolo Valley Drive and IH-35. Effectively though, this is a regional destination center on the corner of 35 and Cibolo Valley Drive. So that's how staff is sort of treating it. Number three, the existing uses of land in the vicinity. So as I mentioned, there's restaurant, retail pad sites, there's multifamily housing. This is that proposed Home Depot location. And Evo is right next door as well. Some other considerations as well. With the granting of the waiver, the granting of the waiver will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare. So the staff has determined that it is not detrimental to the public health, safety, and general welfare, and that actually Home Depot, acting as an anchor tenant, could help drive some of the commercial activity to the surrounding properties. Number two, strict interpretation of the provision of the section would deprive the applicants of rights commonly enjoyed in other nearby properties. So I bring up Evo because it is a similar location, and through the PDD process, they were allowed a 478 square foot sign, so slightly bigger. They are technically further back, but they did get that approved through the PDD process. At the time, there was no waiver process. So this comes to staff's recommendation. So staff does not support the applicant's request for 580 square feet. However, staff does support treating the Home Depot as effectively being addressed off of I-35. We think that is more appropriate in this situation. So essentially, if they are allowed to have that classification, then they would be allowed a wall signage space of 350 square feet total, because 250 for the interstate plus the large building, so they get an extra 100 feet. Staff feels that that is a more appropriate waiver request. So this would be only for the front facade, so the facade facing I-35. The other two facades that they are allowed signage on would still be that 200. So staff is recommending approval of the waiver request with the condition that the maximum allowable wall signage for the front facade be increased to 350 rather than 580. And I believe the applicant is here. They'd like to
Good evening. I'm Aaron Perinsky with Kimley Horn. We're the engineer on the project, so we've been working on this project and all the projects leading up to this part of Schertz Station. We're here to speak on behalf of Home Depot. Home Depot would like to stick with their original request, and that's still the request of 580 feet. They're asking for, and that's based on their standard Home Depot sign package that they're used to doing at all the stores. They need, certainly understand we have a good working relationship with staff, certainly understand everything Sam presented in his report. That's a code-based recommendation. It's certainly understandable. This is also a big building, so when you apply that square footage limit to a big building like that, I think it's something like 3% of the face. Well, as you know, we've all been to Home Depot before. That's a big building and a very small amount to provide the signage they need to show people where to go and where the departments are, and standard Home Depot signage. So a couple other things to consider, where this is located, and he pointed out the addressing difference. This does front all on 35, and it's also buffered on both sides by commercial development. So it doesn't face any residences, it doesn't face any single-family uses. So that's another reason why we think that's a reasonable request to stick to their standard sign package. So just given that, the limit of what the number is applied to such a big square footage, that's tough for them to make work. It faces the freeway, and we don't feel like it's detrimental or it's going to be even seen by any residences in the area. We feel like, on behalf of Home Depot, they would still like that full sign package to provide their standard signage to this building too, like they're used to doing. So that's what I have. I'm here to answer any questions that I can. I am the civil engineer, so we usually don't answer questions about the building, but I can do my best.
Yeah, I was really expecting the regular lady that comes up whenever Kimley Horn is on the agenda, so.
Ashley?
Ashley,
Oh,
yes.
yeah. Didn't call in Ashley for this one, but I actually just talked to her a couple days ago, but yeah, got me this time, sorry.
All right. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, this is not a public hearing. Okay, cool. I've got a couple of things. Sam, first of all, thank you for recognizing that this building, whose brilliant idea was to address these things off of Rips Chrysler instead of 35? Okay?
Kind of how the lots are shaped and how the subdivision is, yeah.
I always was under the impression that the address was whatever street the building faced, and it doesn't face Rips. But anyway, thank you for at least recognizing that. Again, for bringing up Evo. I had it on my list here because if I remember right, the discussion with Evo was how far back from the interstate they were located, and that's why we allowed the increased sign area, was to make it visible or more visible from the interstate. I've got a couple of more things, but anybody else have anything? They want to ask questions? Judy, go ahead.
Are there other Home Depots with these types of restrictions? Or would, by changing the amount of square footage that we allow in Schertz, will it make it look different than what we're used to seeing with Home Depots? I mean, is this like a one-off that this one's going to look different because it doesn't have enough signage? I mean, I know you're not a Home Depot person, but,
Yeah, I mean, if you don't,
yeah.
Sure.
I think when you go around to the Home Depots, whichever ones we've visited, they all pretty much look the same, at least as far as the signage and the representation. It all goes into branding. It all goes into making sure the customer knows where they're going into, just so everybody could kind of have the same experience in each one. I think if you change that, I think it would be noticeable. I think it would look different, not necessarily in a positive way. It wouldn't be an enhancement for it to look different with less signage. I think it may be more confusing than anything. But again, that's civil engineer's perspective. I can't speak to whether other Home Depots have had that restriction or not, but I'm kind of just speaking more from a citizen that goes to Home
Right.
Depot. It seems like it would look different.
I feel like as a consumer, when you pull up to a Home Depot, they all look the same. You know where the lumber is, you know where the garden center is, it's all these things. And so why should the city put a restriction on allowing the same signage that you're used to seeing? And because it's so far off this is just my opinion, because it's so far off the highway, I think it's beneficial to allow them a little bit more square footage so they're more visible.
And
That's,
staff definitely understood that and took that into consideration, which is why we think the upsizing to what our code says would be an interstate
right.
classification is appropriate. And, prior to the Article 11 updates that we just did, it was much, much smaller. So the way that staff's position was, well, we just passed these amendments increasing it. If we wanted to give people on the interstate 500 square feet of signage, that's what we would have put the code amendment for. But we decided, that was too much. And I think that was, kind of in line with what City Council was going with too. So, we provided the exception for large buildings for over 100 square foot, you get more. So we're trying to, meet applicants in the middle. And so, that's essentially where staff's position is.
This wouldn't count the monument sign, correct?
No, just
Okay.
the wall sign.
Yeah, so I agree with staff on it. I mean, I agree you should get a little more, since it is such a big building, but we just passed this.
My question also is, if we start decreasing their signage, they do have entrance signs for clearance for height. Are we going to decrease that where it's no longer visible, or we could have some kind of impact on the building? I mean, where do they cut their branding off, and where do they cut the safety aspect off? Where do they start making those cuts?
Yeah.
And that doesn't differentiate. The request for the standard sign package is just, and that's the challenge with the way the code is written, and it's intentionally written that way. I mean, Schertz has always had a very restrictive sign ordinance with the intent that it sets the standard low, so you can protect the landscape, you can protect the scenery along the street. So that's all been a benefit to the city. And even with the increase, the recent increase, it still requires applicants to come to y'all to individually consider each application, which is good for the city. But for such a big building like this, limiting it to a number instead of a percentage that's what's unique about this application. If you have a standard retail building or a standard strip center or a restaurant and the limit is 350, that's a very reasonable request. But when you have a Home Depot that's 100,000+ square feet, limiting it to that same number is more restrictive than a normal retail building. So that's what's different. But specific to your question, it's just the number of signage altogether. It doesn't split it up on the types.
Yeah, because my concern would be that if they've got to cut signage out, they've got to reduce size. If they reduce size, you reduce visibility, and then we could have other issues down the road.
And just to be clear, life safety signage, like, exits and stuff like that, are not part of our sign permits.
Well, they do have the entrance of the clearances.
Sure.
And the exits, and that's my concern, if they drop that font size down where it's not readable, and somebody goes through there and doesn't realize.
So if we didn't count that, they're roughly 30 to 40 square feet. So if you go with 30 square feet, two of them, that would reduce everything by 60 square feet, looking at the diagrams. So. Before Judy gets a second show, anybody else? Judy? Did you want to talk again, or has this been flashing at me and I didn't notice it? That's all right, I'll take care of it. I'm not used to looking over here, so. Yeah, you know, it's a Home Depot. And looking at the diagram, the only thing that really stands out with me is the Home Depot. The lumber, the garden center, those are relatively, and the what is it, the rental sign, shoot, you can barely see it there on the front of the building. And I'm not sure, number one, it surprises me that City Council delegated approval authority to this commission rather than retaining it themselves. I'm not really sure, you know, although the UDC amendment went through us. And I assume we recommended approval to council, but I'm not really sure what problem they're trying to solve. Used to be a percentage of the facade, right? A square footage, isn't that what we used to have?
So the old code would be like 15% of the facade or 150 square feet, whichever is less.
Okay.
So it was actually much more restrictive, the old code.
But, you know, this is typical of these big box stores. I mean, you look at Walmart, almost the same kind of thing where you've got the store name, and then you've got, what do we got up here? One side, I think, says grocery, and the other side says pharmacy. So, but you do have to keep the word, getting too old for this stuff. Where'd that word go? Precedent. Okay, you got to keep that in the back of your mind when we consider things like this. That if we were to approve this one, what do we do with the next one? And that was always a big concern when I did code interpretations as the fire marshal. I always wanted to make sure I had a valid reason that I could articulate as to why I approved this one and not the other one. Roderick, you had something?
I was just interested in knowing what staff's recommendation would be regarding the Home Depot sign itself, since that represents the majority of square footage.
Yeah, I think staff feels that there is room to decrease signage. I mean, that's essentially what it is. Like, I understand, like Home Depot, this is probably the same sign package that goes out all over the country when they build a new store. So, and not every municipality has as much, you know, is as intentional with their sign package or sign codes as we are. You know, Schertz has had stricter standards for signs for a long time. And, you know, as you know, our planning manager, Emily, went through several workshops for temporary signs, you know, it's been kind of a lot of debate on how to make it more flexible, make it easier for applicants. And these are the numbers that we landed on. And so staff feels that it is reasonable to, you know, find how to make 350 work.
I want to kind of add on to Sam's piece. This isn't just sign specific, right? If you think Home Depot, all the rest of the national chains, you think McDonald's, CVS, they all have building footprints that are their standard. They have lot layouts that are their standard. But when they come to Schertz, we have site design requirements that sometimes require them to change, add additional landscaping, adding building articulations and elevations. If they want to have that business and building in Schertz, they have to meet the City of Schertz standards. So it's not just, you know, Home Depot, isn't just being requested to meet City of Schertz sign standards. They also had to meet everything else in the UDC in terms of their building footprint, adding additional articulations that you might not see at another typical Home Depot. Improved or increased, screening around the garden center, doing additional trees in their parking lot, things that if you go to, say, the Home Depot in Seguin, you're probably not gonna see because it's Schertz's Home Depot. So keep that in the back of your brain too, of it's not just a differentiation from the standard Home Depot for signs, but it's truly making it incorporated and have that Schertz feel.
That's evidenced by those elevations. I mean, that's a very custom Home Depot elevation design to meet all of the specific Schertz articulation and building requirements that she's talking about. So there's already been a lot of coordination with staff and with the architects on meeting all those requirements that are specific to Schertz.
Can I say something again?
Roderick, are you done?
Well, in looking at this, 350 square feet wouldn't even allow the sign that says Home Depot on the front. I mean, and then to get rid of all the others, I mean, that is very restrictive to do that. I mean, on a 100,000 square foot building, 350 square feet for a sign, that's what, 35 times 10 by 35? Or, I mean, it's very small.
So I would question right back to the commission, if the commission does decide to move forward with this and allow 580 feet, I would say then staff is going to come back with another UDC amendment, and if you're on I-35, I-10, any of those I-10 roadways, and you're over 100,000 square feet building, we should allow 580 square feet of signage if we think that that is appropriate. So just keep all of these considerations. Don't just think it's just for the Home Depot. It's, do we think this caliber, this 100 square foot plus building should have regardless of Home Depot, if it's any other business, should they have 580 square feet of signage?
I do think it's a unique business that's going to be this large. It could be a warehouse, industrial, something that doesn't require as much signage. I mean, I do feel like this is very unique. We're not going to have big, huge 100,000 square feet buildings popping up in Schertz every, that often. So for me, I believe this is a very unique situation, and my opinion again is to allow them an exception, with a waiver to have more square footage. That's just my opinion. But again, I don't think they're going to come up that often. And many times when you do see a building this large, it's not the same type of business. It's not retail. It's a warehouse or something like that. That's just my opinion. And I know it's important to have signage to draw people in.
Clayton?
I mean, I don't see any reason why Home Depot shouldn't meet the standard we've already set, considering that we just went through this process. I mean, I get the main sign will probably be smaller, but there's nothing to me that screams that we should immediately get rid of the standards we just set for the first person who asks us to, for a Home Depot. That's like down the road and in Seguin and in New Braunfels. I mean, I think the variance that staff has presented, yeah, it should get a little bit more, but again, to immediately say, oh yeah, we set these standards, we've workshopped this. I mean, we made changes at the last P&Z meeting for the sign code, and then it went to council, and I'm not sure if they made changes or they accepted what we had, and so everyone was on the same page, and now to immediately say, let's just go with something else. I think it's counterintuitive to the process we just went through. I don't see a reason why Home Depot can't meet what we have set if you've already met everything else that we've already stipulated in the UDC. I think there's a lot of room to make things smaller, but at the same time, keep the safety signage. I don't think you would shrink your 30 square feet. I think you would take your 437 square foot sign and make it smaller. You already have a massive monument sign by the highway. People already know it is a Home Depot. I don't see how losing, I mean, what's the difference between like 150 square feet realistically is gonna make that big of a difference to your business impact. I don't think we should approve it.
I think it would only have the Home Depot sign. There would be nothing left.
David?
Consideration question, for apples to apples, Lowe's, what is their square footage on their signage?
I don't have that number in front of me.
Because their signage looks like, from seeing it, is probably a little more also. And if we're going to compare apples to apples, another big box store like that would be a good comparison.
Yeah, Lowe's, Walmart, those big buildings that are up on 35, those are also built, permitted, constructed long, like 2007. And Walmart also has a sign variance, so.
I was going to point out that, and excuse me, that there's always, every time you come up with something new, you're always going to find examples that came before you had the new rule, like Walmart and H-E-B and Lowe's. So now I'm starting to get behind here. I see David's light flashing, but Roderick, did
Yeah, so I would just say, so I understand that we just went through this. I also know that there were no comparatives done during that meeting, right? To even know what 350 square feet would look like on a 100,000 square foot building. So we didn't have that level of discussion. And for me, I would simply ask, and I get that, we're Schertz and we want to be different. Is this the type of relationship we want to have with big box stores, right? Or do we just not even want them? If the signage, which it doesn't, looking at it, I mean, it doesn't, look like it's much compared to how large the building is. So I know that, granting an exception or granting a waiver to something that we just approved might fly in the face of, standard procedure. But those comparisons weren't made. We didn't have that level of discussion. I would have welcomed it. I would welcome it now and even into the future. So, and, as Ms. Emily articulated, do we want to, make a revision to the UDC to say that, buildings over 100,000 square feet, should have more, then yeah, that's something that we should discuss, right? But I think it all goes back to, what are we willing to fall on our sword over? And I don't think that this signage is so hideous that that we'd want to do that, but that's just my opinion. Over. Thank you.
Clayton?
I'll make one last point just on the topic of continually updating the UDC. I just, as someone who works in planning, I think it's very inappropriate to continuously modify your standard development code for every single project that comes in. To add, well, we didn't like how this project was, so we're going to set it to 300 feet. But then the Home Depot comes and they want 500 feet. Well, then we'll make our standard 500 feet. Well, when the next store comes and they want 600 feet, do we make the standard 600 feet? Well, when the next store comes, do they want 800 feet and a 40-foot height? Oh, well, do we make that the standard? I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think that is a process that we should start or make a habit of continuously making changes to code, because then how do you as a developer or as a government set this is what our rule is, we're going to follow this rule. So if I was planning to come, I mean, if you're going to change your rule every meeting just because we're, oh, we didn't like how they handled this, oh, we didn't like how they handled that, let's go fix the UDC, let's go change it. I just don't think that's a appropriate path to handling things, is to continually make those updates. So, and that's my bit.
Well, I agree with you. We don't want to be changing the UDC all the time, but we don't have to. That's what the waiver process is for. Okay? And I appreciate Emily's input, but if the commission chooses to approve this waiver, no, we don't have to go change and give everybody 580 square feet. Judy, you got another comment?
Yeah, well, my comment is, so you have 100,000 square foot face on I-35 or an FM road, and you get 350 square feet, and you're a 100,000 square foot building. But a 30,000 square foot building or 10,000 square foot building gets the same 350 because they're on 35.
They would get 250.
250? What was the
You're
extra
allotted
100
an extra
for?
100 square footage for a large building.
But you realize it's only like 10 by 10, which is like the size of a nursery. That's a teeny tiny sign when you look at it as a huge,
And,
my opinion, sorry.
I mean, all I'll say is we did bring this to P&Z.
I
We
think we
presented all
just-
those changes.
Yes.
We voted and recommended approval for that.
We did. I don't think I didn't, just like Roderick was saying, that, when you see it on 100,000 square feet, and that's not usually who's coming in here, 100,000 square foot business. I mean, I think we could have an amendment or something that allows for a little bit more on a building over 50,000 or 100,000 square feet. But again, this is what the waiver process is for, to make this allowance for this situation. So,
I think staff's recommendation to consider it as if it was addressed on 35 is already a significant concession. And in my opinion, we've given them a significant concession. They have to live with what our sign ordinance says.
Okay. I've got several things to say here. First of all, yes, I realize that that we reviewed that UDC requirement, we recommend approval, but here's the way you guys come to us with these UDC amendments, and they're pages and pages and pages, okay? And they're red lines and red lines and words and words and words. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think, it's kind of like Congress. I don't think we really understand what we're voting for sometimes, okay? But this particular change has a waiver process in it, and it's there for a reason, okay? Now, that said, could you put you got a diagram of maybe that picture you had with the pad sites and Home Depot in the back? Can you find that one? No, the facade, you had a picture showing the actual, there you go.
That one,
That
yeah.
one, okay. So, looking at those pad sites, so let's just take the one on the left. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, they're thinking they might have as many as 5 tenants in there. Does each of those tenants get 250 square feet?
Correct.
So that total building then would have that'd be 1,250 square feet of signage, right? And yet the bigger building behind it would only get 350. Okay.
Correct.
Now, here's what else is coming. they've got those big, as you go north on 35, before you get to Schwab, you look over on the north side, and there's those big office warehouses going in, okay? Those are going to be individual tenants. It's not going to be like Amazon in one big building, or, well, I mean, it could be, but the way they were talking about it, they're talking about individual businesses. And so you got to think ahead. I'm sorry, 250 square feet for being on the interstate. They wouldn't get the extra 100 because the individual tenants aren't going to be 100,000 square feet, I don't think. But, that's something to think about, and where I was talking about setting precedents. How do you, although I could clearly articulate why I think Home Depot is okay with 600 square feet, and Dunkin' Donuts isn't, okay? Here's the problem, and no offense, sir, but I really wish somebody would have been here to tell us, if we limit Home Depot to 350 square feet, what are they gonna do? See? Well, and, but again, Mr. Wallace pointed out that they already have a monument sign out front, so it's not like we're hiding the business. But some quick math here, if you don't count the overhead clearance signs, you got a roughly 140 square feet of signage. The smaller signs. So if we, with 350 square feet and you take that away, that leaves 210 square feet for the main sign. Okay. Although I would assume that they just wouldn't, that they'd make some adjustments to all of them rather than just one. Judy, did you have something else to say? I see your light blinking again. Oh, okay.
We look at the aesthetics of it also, with the signage that they're asking for for their marquee sign on the building itself. That's going to skew it where it's going to look off, and it's not going to look probably what Home Depot wants. And we definitely want to have something where it just looks like we just kind of stenciled something on the building that doesn't match the size of what we have. So again, it comes back to looking at others in the area. There have been variances before. This is a waiver. It's a one-off because of the size. It's an anchor building that we're looking at, instead of looking at a bunch of smaller buildings in line. Those would probably have a different outlook on them than you have something that's this large and it's going to draw this much in. So it's just a consideration to look at the signage that Home Depot is requesting is not overly gaudy. They're not asking for LED flashing lights or anything. It fits their prospects, and it fits with the continuity of the area based upon where they're going to be facing 35. It won't interact with the homes behind it, and it'll be able to draw in probably a little more economic impact over the long term.
I have another question. If this waiver came through a year from now, would you have a different opinion? The fact that it came in a month after the approval, is that skewing your, I'm just saying in general, I'm not pointing fingers at anyone, but, if this was a proposed waiver in 2026, I don't think we'd really be having this type of conversation over this.
Excuse me just a second. Sam, could you go back to the sign slide, please? Just so I can look at it. I'm sorry, who wanted to speak next?
I mean, I'll answer. I mean, for me, it's when looking at a variance, it's what is the hardship on the business? And I don't feel like it is a hardship to ask Home Depot to comply with the code. And I think I would have the same thought process, a year from now even, of if you came in, what is the hardship in meeting this code requirement? So.
Well, I'm still hung up on the fact that the pad site in the front with 5 tenants, although I don't think it's feasible, potentially could have 1,250 square feet of sign. Although I really don't think that's realistic, okay? What?
Confirming.
Confirming what? Share it with us, Sam. Or what?
Yeah, each tenant would get 250.
Yeah.
The way the code's written is,
Although, again, I don't think you could realistically put 250 square foot of sign on each one of those tenants, but,
I think each tenant would have cost considerations as well, and so,
well, and do we have any, where does it mention, because I remember seeing the monument sign where it said there were going to be one out front. Do we have any? Oh, okay. Because I've always been, yeah,
yeah, the intent is to put a monument sign, yes.
let's see, that's, yeah. Hopefully that's on the right driveway. You know, it drives me crazy to go through the forum, see a sign that says Kohl's, but you're way held down, you're the way the heck down by Hobby Lobby, and Kohl's is at the other end. Yeah, it just, that whole place drives me bonkers. Okay. But I've never been, I've always criticized these big 100-foot freeway signs that, like Walmart and those kinds of places, when I've been to many communities and municipalities that don't allow those signs. They're all monument signs that are, maybe 5 or 6 feet tall, and yet you still see Walmart and H-E-B and all the other big box places. Okay, well, I was really hoping this would be a little bit easier. I'll be honest with you, I don't know which way to go.
So there's really 3 options here. You can approve what the applicant has requested, you can approve with staff's conditions, or you can deny it.
Yeah, no, I understand that, Sam, but what I'm saying is part of me wants to just,
Or,
now, Clayton, do you have something to add?
Well, I was going to offer you a motion so we could.
Hang on a second. Because according to the city attorney, once a motion is made, you can only discuss the motion. So once you make a motion, you've cut off all the whining and complaining from the chairman, okay?
I would do it right.
So, sir, before that, there's no critical time frame for this. We're still working with staff on site plan approval and building permitting. If we need to table this to the next meeting for further discussion, that I don't think that's going to cause any heartburn from the developer or Home Depot either. So that's a 4th option.
Well, it would help me a lot. I don't know about the other commissioners. I'm really curious of if they're only allowed 350 square feet, what are they going to do? Of course, there's a good way to find that out and that's just to deny the waiver and see what they come back with. Now, you mentioned that if they don't like our decision, if we only approve 350, they can go to council, right?
Yeah, they can appeal the decision of P&Z to city council.
So, no, here once again, I think council's put us between a rock and a hard place. I really feel that way. We're sitting here trying to make a decision. Now, what I started to say, Clayton, was part of me wants to go with 580 and part of me wants to go with 350. And I waffle back and forth. Okay. So, go ahead. Anybody else have any questions or discussion that we can actually,
Just a real quick, if there could be an alternate rendering of what they would look at versus the 580 versus the 350 we're asking for, so we can see a rendering of what those images would look like on the proposed building, so we could make a better choice what we're looking at. I think that would be helpful.
well, you know, that's certainly something we could do. You know, we could, you know, if it's the commission's desire, we can postpone this to another meeting. And that's, the motion would be to postpone when you want to kick it into another meeting. I don't know if that would really do anything for us, though, you know. Judy?
If we were to approve with conditions, could that condition be based on maybe, I hate to do it, changing the code to, based on the size of the building? I mean, like if it's over
Well, that would-
75,000, we've done that already?
Well, no, that would be a separate kind of action. Like you wouldn't be able to condition the approval on changing the code, right? Like that, we would have to come back and do the whole process of changing the code.
Okay.
But,
So,
but you can grant a waiver with the condition, and you could make a motion and propose a separate condition if you want, P&Z's condition. So,
Well,
not to give you a fifth option and muddy it up a bit,
no,
but, you know.
Now I forgot where I was going. I really think our three options at this point are to approve the applicant's request. We can approve staff's recommendation for 350 square feet, or we can just flat out deny the application.
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to recommend approve PLVAR 202501444 with staff's recommendation and conditions.
The 350 square feet.
Correct.
I'll second that.
Okay, then any further? I think we kind of beat this one to death, but anybody else got anything? People are already voting. I really wish you'd wait till but that's okay. All right, I'm not hearing anything else, so the motion before the commission is to approve PLVAR 2025-0144 sign waiver with the limit of 350 square feet as recommended by staff. Is that correct, gentlemen?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. All right, all, if you would, go ahead and record your votes. Yeah, I have 6 votes. Would you publish that, please? I have 3 ayes, 3 nays. Motion fails. Okay. So,
Do we have another motion?
I think and I wish the city attorney was here, because I think what we've got here is this motion pass or fails, and by default, then the waiver is disapproved. That's my opinion. I can't hear you, Emily.
I think this specific motion fails, and you need to make another motion.
But why? Well, we don't follow Robert's rules. All I know is it takes 3 affirmative votes to move a motion, to approve a motion. And here's what I see. Somebody, so now, this was to approve with staff's recommendation. So somebody want to make a motion to deny or approve the applicant's request? We could try that and see what comes up.
I make a motion to accept and approve the applicant's request as stated.
Second.
Okay, hang on, give me just a second here. I'm getting behind, so. All right, so now we got Hughes and Goldick. And their motion is to approve the applicant's request, or PLVAR 2025-0144 sign waiver as requested by the applicant. Does that sound right? Okay. Any discussion? Okay, so just to be
I want
clear.
to discuss something real quick before we go to vote. You didn't see me. Just
Go
real
ahead.
quick. Oh my gosh, now I lost my train of thought. Oh, that these types of waivers, I don't think are going to be common. I think, again, this is an exception. It's a huge structure. And it is going to draw other businesses to the area. If you have those smaller strips that are allowed 250 for their frontage, it doesn't make sense to not allow Home Depot to have more signage. That's just my discussion.
Okay. I'll jump in here and say, what's the point of having rules if you're just gonna, anyway. All right, so once again, the current motion before the commission is to approve the sign waiver as requested by the applicant, 580 square feet. So a yes vote is to approve the applicant's request. So please record your votes. All right, I have 6 votes. You publish that, please? 3 ayes and 3 nays. That motion fails. So again, I'm going to suggest that what we've just done is disapprove the applicant's waiver. Now, here's the problem, folks. We disapproved the waiver. So now, which included the staff's recommendation of the extra square footage. So without the waiver, they're down to what, Sam?
200 square feet.
200 square feet.
Yeah, 250, sorry. Or actually 350, I'm sorry.
No, because the address is Rip
Oh, yeah, I know.
Square
Yeah, it's 200 because they would be all others.
Foot, right?
That's correct.
Because they're addressed off of Rips Chrysler. So it'd be 200 square feet because they have 100, and then plus 100 for the large
For the
building.
large building, okay.
And I
So
would,
now,
I'm sorry, Mr. Outlaw. I was just going to say, because this action item is appealable to the city council, if we could have the 3 members that voted nay on that last motion, if we could have just a quick, this is why I voted nay for the record, because city council, if it is appealed, they may want to know the specific reasoning. I know y'all have provided a lot of communication, but just a quick, this is why I voted nay on that last.
well, unfortunately, I've erased the votes, so I don't know, I can't tell you who voted how. I know how I voted.
So, yeah, we know. So Wallace, McMaster, and Outlaw, if
Okay,
if
I
the 3 of
voted
you.
no, and again, Butterfly could have knocked me off the fence one way or the other, but in the end, I sided with Commissioner Wallace that what's the problem? Why bother having rules if we're just gonna ignore them? So who else? Commissioner?
Yeah, I didn't feel like there was a hardship on the part of Home Depot. We'd already given a concession. I agreed with staff's opinion that we should have interpreted it as a interstate with the extra 100 square feet. But I don't feel that granting a variance right after going through this process to update our code and give people more signage was appropriate.
I didn't see any hardship. I agree with staff. And that's why I voted the way I voted.
Do we want the reasonings for the nay votes on the first motion as well? Just because. So if you voted nay on the first motion, can you please explain why if that nay?
Well, you know my thoughts. Do you need me to say it again?
Please.
I feel like this situation is not going to be something that comes up often. 100,000 square feet with such a minimal amount of signage, I think is not going to, I think it's going to look odd. I just don't think it's going to, I just feel like there should be some continuity in the signage that we're used to seeing with a building of that stature.
Commissioner Hughes?
That's kind of the same way I'm looking at. We need to make sure that we have continuity between what we already have and what we're proposing. And with a building at 130,000 square feet, I think it'll look off and it won't give them the same advertising, even they'll have a monument sign out front similar to Lowe's, H-E-B, and Walmart in that area. I think we need to have continuity with those buildings based upon their size and based upon their economic impact.
And Commissioner Hector?
Yeah, I think the signage would be instructive to the members of the community going to shop at that location, and the main sign would look and feel very restrictive just based on the size of the building. And, you know, notwithstanding the fact that, you know, we recently approved the signage, but I think ultimately there's nothing wrong with doing what makes sense. So that's why I thought.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, before we move on, I don't think, we're not done with this one yet, okay?
Okay.
I just want to ask the commission, knowing that where we're at right now with this waiver request, this Home Depot is now limited to 200 square feet. Does that change would that change anybody's mind on approving the 350 square feet? Is it worth re-looking at that, or do we just let this take its course, and I assume you'll take it to city council, okay?
I mean, is this something we can continue? I don't, I mean, I'm looking, can we, you don't know? We don't know.
Reference to the chairman?
Well, I don't, again.
I mean, if this is something we can do a continuance, obviously the six of us are not gonna, we're hung here.
Would you like to make a motion to postpone to another meeting?
Yeah, cool. I'll make a motion for a continuance if we can get more people for the next one.
I'll second that motion.
So just for clarification, that is a postponement to the August?
At the discretion of the applicant.
Perfect.
I'd like to understand the why of that. Like,
Well,
The continuance?
okay.
Well, I mean, for the
Time out.
I'm sorry.
Time out, okay? And the word is postpone, okay? And no, if we want to postpone it, we postpone it to August, not to some indefinite date. Or we postpone it till September. But I think the motion to postpone needs to have a finite date on it, okay? So, would you like to amend your motion?
I can't. Do you have a preferred? So I'll make a motion for a postponement to the August Planning and Zoning meeting.
I'll still second that.
Okay. Hang on, Roger. Hang on. All right, so I have a motion and a second to postpone this item to the August meeting. Discussion. Sir, go ahead.
What are we postponing?
We're postponing I motioned to postpone it because the six of us, I understand Home Depot side, I understand the code side. I think if they want to come back with the additional exhibits that others had requested and with other commissioners' insight, maybe we can come to a better answer. But I don't think that the 200 is appropriate, and so, I mean, their option is either we can postpone it and revisit it, or they could appeal it or be stuck with 200.
Yeah, so I think one of the potential advantages, Roderick, to postponing this is that we have 7 people. See, right now we've set ourselves up for a tie vote. With an even number, we're set up for a tie vote. Whereas if we have an odd number, maybe if it's not 7, it's 5. But you're not going to get a tie vote out of an odd number. Does that make sense?
I completely understand that. And I completely understand the process now. And the process has that we voted on it and it was 3-3. And that allows for and affords the applicant to appeal it, and it goes to city council. That's the process, right? I guess I'm trying to understand why we would want to overrule that process just because it's convenient. We already know, and no one's wavering on their opinion of what we saw, what we discussed, and the process is in place for a reason. So just like I heard several times that we just voted on the signage change, so for that reason, I don't think we should make or provide any waivers for it so early on, since it was just a month or so ago. Okay, fair, right? But the process is in place for a reason. So let the process work the way the process is designed to work. That's my opinion.
Right, so again, we could postpone this till the next meeting and have an odd number of people and let's say that that odd number of commissioners goes with the 350 square feet. Well, Home Depot may want to appeal that. So or we flat out deny it altogether and they appeal that. So all we've really done by waiting till August to hash this out again is lengthen the time that they have to go to council. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes perfect sense, which feeds into my point. Why continue to kick that can down the road when we've already voted?
All right, anybody else want to jump in here? Okay, so we have a motion and a second to postpone PLVAR 2025-0144 sign waiver to the August P&Z meeting. So to be clear, a yes vote is to look at this again in August, where a no vote would just leave it where it is and allow Home Depot to do what they want to do in terms of going to city council, okay? So please record your vote. All right, I see 6 votes. Can you publish that, please? We have 1 in favor and 5 opposed, so that motion fails. So we will just leave it where it is right now with basically effectively what we've done this evening is, in my mind, is we've denied the applicant's request. And it's now up to them if they want to seek another audience to appeal it, take that to city council.
Right.
Okay? I really didn't think it would be that hard, okay? Sure you want to stand up there right now, huh? You know, you're right. All right, Daisy, go ahead. What do you got for us?
I am here to present a workshop on the development process because you requested one after we came back from APA Texas.
Right.
So we thought we would take this as an opportunity to present the whole development process to some new commissioners that we have on the board, because we know that a lot of them don't have the experience that you had, Mr. Outlaw, with actually being part of the process. So that's the direction we're going. We're going to take you through the whole development process like if you were an applicant, and you will have the freedom to discuss anything after. So when it comes to the development process, we are pretty transparent with these things. We put everything on our development manual, which is our website, where all applications are listed, flow charts are listed for non-residential development and residential development, and we can help people all the way from zone change SUP all the way to building permits. So raw land to going vertical and getting a C of O, but we also help people in between the process. So if they already have a zone change, we can help them at plating, at site plan, wherever they need, we will help them. But we can also help them way before that with the free pre-development meeting. These are free. Other cities actually do charge per the hour and per department. We have planning, engineering, and fire in that room. So if there are any concerns about the nature of a business, a property they want to, choose, or if they have a different set of properties they want to choose, we can discuss with them any capacity issues, access issues, location issues, depending on their building site, if fire is going to have special requirements due to our fire code amendments or anything like that. We can sit with them and really hash it out, what would be required. And again, we can help them at any time through the process. So if this is before they're purchasing a property, after they have purchased it, after a zone change, they have their zoning, they come in, they have their site plan, and they want to discuss that with us. We're here to help them at every step of the way. So when it comes to the zone change and SUP process, they submit their documents and staff checks all those submittal items. This is usually planning staff, since we're the ones that kind of act as that project manager. And then from there, if we have all the documents as are listed in our zoning checklist, our SUP checklist, and our PDD sub-checklist that has even more requirements, it'll be intaken. We charge that per acre. And from those documents, fire, engineering, planning, JBSA, even as you have seen tonight, when something's in the APZ2, we need their affirmative recommendation. And we even sent it to the chiefs as well to kind of look at, okay, what are these documents? What effect does it have in our community, and go from there. So again, this is our TA determination form, as you've seen with new policy from council. Engineering kind of looks at that traffic change, making determinations of, yes, there is going to be an impact and it is mitigatable, or just going from there. But also we'll look at exhibits, the meets and bounds, and then letter of intent. And then before it comes to the Planning and Zoning Commission, we do have to send mailers 10 days before the hearing per state law. So that's when we send out those beautiful letters to everyone within 200 feet. And people go, what is this? What is going on? And we start fielding in those calls, getting those letters back with, objections, neutrals, and in favors. This is also when we have the applicants post your beautiful yellow notice sign that is required per us. This is actually the one off of tonight's zone change. along Maskey. All active public hearing notices are also posted on our What's Developing in Schertz website. This is updated after Planning and Zoning Commission, before Planning and Zoning Commission, and before council. So people can follow the hearings as they go through the process, and they can see when they're approved or if they're failed. And then it's also posted on our public notices webpage, and all documents are linked there as well. So it's pretty transparent to the public. And everyone, and then we also send it to the chiefs, so we send it to the police department, EMS, and fire to see if they have any major concerns, and that's something that we enter in our staff report and in our presentation to you all as well. And then when it comes to you, we present our staff report. You see it condensed into a presentation. This is where we make those considerations of the master thoroughfare plan with engineering's guidance, the traffic impact analysis, adjacent land uses and zoning. We look at the comp plan. A lot of our criteria is really honed in on the comprehensive land use plan, the strategic plan, any parks and recreation master plan, that's more for residential. We also look at the protests that are coming in, what are people saying, what are their major concerns, but also the allowed uses that are within that zoning district. And again, as we always reiterate, when a zone change comes before us, that it's not just what the applicant is proposing, but it's all those allowed uses within that zoning district. And again, I know a lot of times it's quite difficult because the comprehensive land use plan, we have to look towards the future. So we're looking at, okay, after the master thoroughfare plan, roads are built out, how is this all going to play together? How are all the puzzle pieces of the city going to fit together? For the SCP, one of the unique considerations that is part of that criteria is that character and integrity, and that's just because the SCP is for specific use. So P&Z does have the discretion to make that recommendation to City Council, and then City Council has the ultimate discretion to make a decision on allowing that use within that zoning district in that specific parcel. So after the Planning and Zoning Commission makes a recommendation, we have to post in the newspaper 15 days prior per state law. We usually do it about 2 Fridays before. So it's posted once again, and again, it's on the newspaper, and then it goes to City Council. And City Council will either approve or deny the ordinance that's presented to them. And you already know that if they're trying to reapply for the same zone change, they have to wait at least 6 months. But if it's significantly different, then they can do it the next day. So if they have their zoning already, or they get their zoning approved, they go through the platting process. The preliminary platting stage is more if they're starting from ground zero. It's not a simple type of plat that can be done, or if it's multiple parcels that are owned by the same people and they only want a final plat portion by portion or unit per unit. And again, we have this online for everyone. All of this is linkable. They're able to go through it. And again, this is an example of what our website actually looks like. So everything is clickable. People have this at their fingertips. They can see what the costs are going to be for each step in the process, and it's pretty transparent for them. And throughout the platting process, we have engineering, fire, planning, parks, TxDOT, JBSA, and easement holders and utility providers being a part of this. This is really an interdepartmental work that goes to actually getting these plats approved. It isn't just rushed. It takes a long time. It actually takes months. Just because we have to work with a lot of people. For example, right now, TxDOT, their minimum time frame is 6 to 9 months just to get people answers, and that's a quick turnaround on their part. So platting, when we look at plat exhibits, we're looking at the streets, making sure it meets minimum requirements, proposed access points. So this is where we're looking at, okay, are the stub outs that they're proposing appropriate? For fire, one of the biggest things that they consider is dead-end streets, and looking if that dead-end street is too long or if it's short or what's going on, if there's going to be enough turnaround for a fire truck. Staff does look at zoning in the minimum lot dimensions. So again, kind of how we mentioned that, you know, someone can come in for R2, but that is just the minimum. If they want to go above and beyond that to sell bigger lots, they're not forced to ask for RA zoning. R2 can be their minimum, and they can go bigger than that if they'd like. We do look at the plat notes, making sure everything is good. Also, open space requirements, making sure that they have their private open space. But also, if they're going to dedicate land to us, what's going to be built in those. And also, the master parks plan, we do have some larger trail systems. And we want to make sure that if there's parcels that are a part of that, that can be included. And then engineering has all the fun stuff when it comes to geotechnical report, the actual traffic impact analysis. This is where they can review, okay, what are the improvements that developers are actually going to have to do, where it's, right turn only, where they have to have decel lanes, how much of the street do they actually have to build out, if they only have to do, the half, or if they have to do the full. This is also where they start discussing rough proportionality with this, as you know, due to what's happening in the legislature. We're very restricted on what we can actually require people to do or not, so we have to work within those limits. But also water and wastewater, so this is where capacity comes into question. Okay, where are you trying to send your wastewater? Where are you going to connect to water? Making sure that what they're proposing, we actually have capacity for that, and we can expect, that load into our system, but also utilities. And then again, certification, this is where we do all the technical review. It's online once again. It has its own checklist, so applicants know exactly what we're looking for. We also have the technical checklist, which makes it very clear what staff is looking for, and they can use this to go through the process. The people that actually use these checklists are the ones that have much less rounds of review, and the process is actually much smoother for them and easier for them. And as you know, it can go through multiple cycles before it is certified. It depends on the applicant response and the number of review cycles. Sometimes they resubmit something and they only want to respond to planning's comments and not engineering's comments. So that is something that we do run into. After it is certified, it goes through the formal process. This is where they submit, all the documents come in, they should be certified. It's essentially almost a formality. We assess the fee, so no fee is paid during certification, but during formal it is. We receive all the same documents. They can get approval within 2 business weeks, as I say, just because it is administrative approval. But if it does require a waiver for the Planning and Zoning Commission, then it's a minimum 30-day review cycle, just depending on how that lines up. But typically we have it lined up within like 20 days. And this is where you all will see someone is asking for on-site septic, or someone only has access to frontage through an easement, things like that. And then after they get their preliminary plat certified and they go through the preliminary platform application, this is where engineering wants their public infrastructure permit. It usually goes this way just because in the city of Schertz, if you preliminary plat and you own multiple lots, but you plan to final plat in pieces, so think of Saddlebrook, it's a very large development, but they're going to final plat in units, as the years go on. It's going to take multiple years to finally build out. We want to make sure that all the infrastructure that's required is going to support the whole development, not just piece by piece and kind of band-aid each step of the process. So we want to make sure that's all in place before. And then they start the certification process for the final plat. Again, it's the same items. The documents are only going to look different if they final plat in pieces. So if they have 6 units on the preliminary plat and they go unit by unit on the final plat. So again, timing depends on the applicant's response, and then they go through formal. This is a lot of times where you see for commercial, people come in, they ask for on-site septic waivers just for a temporary time period. So think of think of STX Frio. They're in that big agreement with EDC to build the wastewater over a very long distance. So they ask for an on-site septic for a temporary period of time. And again, this can be administratively approved, and it can go to the Planning and Zoning Commission depending if there's a waiver. And again, the time period is the same. And once everything is done, if all the improvements are installed, inspected, and accepted by our engineering department, then they have the pleasure to give us all the documents so we can run to the county for them to go record. So there are other different types of plats. We have minor plat, replat, and amending plat. It's very specific on what can be done on each one. These processes are much shorter just because they're smaller types of plats, less work or much simpler. And if you're doing minor plat, replat, and amending plat, you can do the site plan at the same time. But after plat recordation for non-residential subdivisions and multifamily, they go through the site plan process. We only see this for residential subdivisions if they're doing an amenity center. So for example, Saddlebrook, if they're doing an amenity center, they'll submit a site plan for that. So we can see that and make sure it meets all of our requirements. But for residential subdivisions, after they go through the platting process and everything's installed, they go straight to residential building permits. So they don't have to go through that site plan process for all the homes. The site plan process is basically the same as a preliminary plat where we have the certification, where we do all the technical review, everything is online and available to them. These are the documents that we're all looking at: the site plan exhibit, landscape plan, tree mitigation, exterior architectural elevations, engineering and fire documents. So the site plan is where we get to all the fun stuff. We look at access, we look at all the site design criteria, we reference the plat for easements. There's a lot of weird non-access easements along like TxDOT right-of-way. We look at the buffers for zoning, we look at the setbacks for zoning. This is where we go, okay, is it commercial and residential next to each other? We're gonna require an additional 20-foot building setback. We look at building height. We look at the land use, we look at impervious coverage, and we look at screening. But we also look at parking ratios and sizes, and then we also look at landscaping within the site plan. And then we get our landscape plans in, we look at that impervious coverage that's required per zoning, we look at those minimum landscape buffers again, the tree planting and the tree species. We also do look at tree mitigation. We look if they're meeting our minimum preservation requirements, what they're proposing to remove, if there's any way we can get the larger trees to be saved instead of, saving some trash trees. We look at trash species. And although we can't regulate building material, we do have required articulations, just the shape and feel of the building, so vertical changes, horizontal changes to that building. And then engineering has the pleasure of looking at stormwater, access, impervious coverage, proposed utilities, and reports. So they have the pleasure of working with TxDOT a lot of times when it's access. So think of this is our big league car wash that's coming along I-35. They had to work with TxDOT on that. Fire, we see things like fire plans where they might submit it separately. They show all the FDC locations, the fire lanes, fire hydrant locations. And again, this can go through multiple cycles depending on the applicant's response. And then after it's certified, they submit the formal application, which has its own fee. This is where the fee is assessed. And after they go through that process, it is a minimum 30-day per our UDC, but if it's an administrative approval, it's 2 weeks or less. But we do have the ability to forward site plans to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and also if a waiver is required. We haven't had that happen recently, but typically people try to avoid that because they want to expedite the process as much as possible. And after they get their site plan approved, they can go straight to building permits. After that, it's the dominoes start falling down, and it goes pretty quickly. But that's basically the development process in a quick nutshell. There's much more I could have added, but feel free to discuss.
All right, thank you, Daisy. I'm going to start because I asked for this. Certainly I hope this was helpful for our newer members that maybe weren't aware of the process itself. Really what I wanted to discuss tonight was the fact that nobody sits in the audience and throws rocks at us at the site plan process. Nobody sits in the audience and throws rocks at us in the planning process. It's all in the zone change requests, okay? And they ask questions like, the three biggies that always come up are traffic, public safety, and possible flooding. And then I've got one here after traffic, I said infrastructure. Now, I'll be honest with you, and I apologize, I never noticed that you were doing the preliminary TIA until last month's agenda. So is that something relatively new, where you've been inserting that in the memo?
So I would say that is relatively new. We've taken the feedback because, as you say, you all are getting the rocks thrown at you, but right, we're hearing all of that as well. So that is a change that staff made to start requiring those preliminary TIAs. It is a big expense for the applicant in some situations, but that full preliminary TIA gets reviewed by John Nowak in our engineering department, and he writes us a formal response that gets put into the staff report. That's a more recent change, and then the other more recent change is, well, I wouldn't say recent, it's been a little longer, but sending it to EMS, police, and fire chiefs to get their input to try to tackle some of the emergency services questions as well that we get a lot. We've sent it to the chiefs. They either have a concern, don't have a concern, and we put those responses in the staff report now too. So they're both more fairly recent, TIA much more recent than the chief's email, but both of those were based off of the questions and concerns that we have. And I will say, if we have a property that we know is in a drainage way that it is a hot button topic or is in a floodplain, we're doing the same thing. We're reaching out to engineering and getting a more formal response from them on how those items could be addressed. So we can talk about it both in our presentation, and it's available for P&Z Council and the residents in the staff report.
Okay, well, thank you, Emily. That's part of what I was looking for, was having some of these answers earlier in the process. Of course, I need to figure out how to say this so I'm not sounding insensitive, okay? But, well, I understand traffic, and I think you heard me rant last month about how I'm just fed up with, how it took me an hour to go 35 to Universal City and almost 30 minutes to come back because aviation was all backed up. And I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to, because that's the big concern of a lot of the surrounding areas when we're proposing a zone change for a new subdivision. Typically commercial, nobody really, they don't turn out in droves for that. But what I was really after with this presentation was, is there anything that we can move into the P&Z process to provide answers earlier in the process? And I think you've done that with the preliminary TIA, public safety response time. Well, I sat here, and I don't know if you heard them go by earlier in the meeting, but I counted 7 police cars, a fire truck, and an ambulance go by. Well, those police cars all must have been sitting over here at the station, not out, Of course, there could have been shift change too. I don't know what time they do that. But people's concerns are always, depending on what we're rezoning, they also like to bring up the more crime. So, yeah, I'm glad you get fire, police, and EMS involved. Maybe if we could get a better comment, say, from the police chief that says, we don't see this, we already cover this area, we don't see a problem with increased response times. Or, what they say now is they don't have any concerns, and maybe that should be good enough.
I actually have spoken to the police chief about essentially how they add more people to the police force when it comes to residential zone changes, since I know that is a concern. And After speaking with him, he did let me know that they do it based off calls that come in the area. So they won't do it preemptively, but once the houses are built and more calls start coming in, then that's basically what they do to say, we need more police officers in this area, in the force, and that's how they add more people to lower the response times.
But I would also, I think that's a great point, Chairman Outlaw. We can definitely ask the three chiefs, can you provide a little more? Why don't you have a concern? Why don't you have any objections? Is it because we're already fully staffed? We don't have a lot of calls there. It's X miles from the station, whatever that may be, but to add a little bit more than just, we don't have a concern. We can definitely ask and request that.
You know, I know they're already, everybody in the city's overworked, but I think maybe a little more substantive comment that you can incorporate into your presentation. I don't know that's going to change anything, because other than provide better information, you know, a lot of these zone change requests, the surrounding property owners are just, it's a very emotional thing for them, and I don't know if there's anything we can do to, although, you know, I remember the one here 2 or 3 meetings ago where we were going to rezone that property on, over here in Central Schertz. And the couple sat out there and they never said anything. And I asked them as they were leaving and say, oh no, we didn't realize it was just going to be another house. We thought it might be, you know. So once they had the information, they were okay with it.
And I think, as Daisy mentioned, I think that's why we've kind of gone above and beyond. It's on what's developing, it's on the public notice, but that ultimately assumes people, you know, use the internet, which I know everybody doesn't, but then we have that bright yellow sign that hopefully people can see to call us. But sometimes people just want to come to the meeting and hear the information to get that fact rather than call us, but we try to put ourselves out there as much as we can for people to call so we can answer those questions before they have to come and spend hours with us sometimes.
Well, it sounds to me, and personally, that's the reason I asked you to go through this process, and I think you're a step or two ahead of me, and thank you. I appreciate that. So, anybody else have any questions or comments?
I'll comment. This goes way further than what we do in San Antonio. Like, we will accept no comment as sufficient. Like, if asked other departments, what do you feel about this? No comment is sufficient.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I've seen your agendas too, so.
Yeah, it's a little different scale.
Yeah. Roderick, anybody before we move on? All right, well, thank you all. And again, I think you're a step or two ahead of me, and what you're doing, I think, thank you, it's headed in the right direction. So thanks.
We thank you for wanting this presentation. We thought it was a good learning opportunity for everybody, maybe a refresher, but glad we are meeting the goals. Thank you.
Okay, so now we have another workshop requested by Commissioner Wallace. So, what do you got for us, Sam?
Okay, this is a workshop concerning distance requirements between car washes. Again, as Chairman Outlaw mentioned, this was brought forward by Commissioner Wallace, requested a workshop related to car washes and distance requirements on May 7th. This is often called a dispersal ordinance. It's intended to prevent clustering or over-concentrating of the same use. We actually have this in Schertz on Main Street, and that is the section in our code right there below it. It prevents tattoo parlors to be within 900 feet of each other on Main Street. What it effectively does is prevent more than two for being on Main Street. Main Street's only like 1,100 feet long, so if you put one at the end, you really can only put another one at the end. If one's smack dab in the middle, everyone else is kind of out of luck. So we have this already. It's already a thing. Now, for our car washes, we have two categories in the city of Schertz. One is automated, facility where a customer can have, you know, a car and have it washed in exchange for financial consideration, and also our self-service, a facility typically coin-operated, used by the customer to wash motorcycles, automobiles, and light load vehicles. Our permitted use table is right here below. Our automated car washes are permitted by right in neighborhood services, General Business 2, and M1, our light industrial district. And the self-service is the same, except it requires a specific use permit in neighborhood services district. So anytime we kind of look at any research for our UDC or anything really, we have our target cities that we look at. These are our target cities that you see here on the left. So we ask, how do they treat their car washes in these cities? Frisk, a lot of them typically have either permitted by right or specific use permits. There's a lot of variation between commercial and industrial and how they permit these. No real consistency other than they're mostly permitted in industrial districts, and in the commercial it varies between permitted by right and specific use permit. However, in our target cities, you see that we have a dispersal ordinance in McKinney, and they have an ordinance that says no car wash can be within a half-mile radius of another car wash. Now, we also looked at in Texas, where there's a dispersal ordinance for car wash, and it seems to be very prevalent in the valley. So you'll see in Edinburgh, they have a 2-mile restriction. In McAllen, a half-mile. In Brownsville, it is 5 miles between each other. And in Harlingen, it is 2 miles. So our GIS department put together some graphs for you. You'll see here the yellow bubbles are really, you see the orange outlines are actually our car washes that are currently in the city. So we have one on 1103. We've got several clustered here on 3009. Although I should mention that you see these 3 here that my cursor is over, those are accessory car washes for like HEB or gas stations. So that little like box off to the side, it's always annoying when the gas pump asks you if you want a car wash. I never do. And then up here, there's a couple more fully automated services, and then this is the one that Daisy showed in her last presentation that is currently being permitted and under construction. So there's a couple down south as well. So a half-mile radius would look something like this. If it would prevent some clustering on the 3009, and then also down here on this 78. We did a 2-mile. It would look something like this. It covers quite a bit of area you see there. And then if we did 5 miles like Brownsville, you're basically never gonna get a car wash ever again in the city of Schertz. So that is really all staff has, as this workshop was requested by Commissioner Wallace. I will let Wallace have the floor to open up discussion.
Thanks. So this, I've requested this in response to a trend that we're seeing in San Antonio development-wise, as a lot of development is really focused on the car washes with the vacuums, very similar to, it's not Be Clean anymore, it's Go, that's it. So that essentially what I've seen development-wise is it's just every intersection has one of these types of automated car wash with vacuums. Purposefully, what I'm hoping to do with this, with the maps, it kind of gives a better picture. Realistically, having some kind of half-mile radius and an SUP similar to McKinney. But the purpose of this really is to encourage other type of development. It just seems to be car wash after car wash after car wash after car wash. And it's very similar, like the clustering at 3009 is following a very similar pattern of the clustering of gas stations right next to 3009 and I-35. So my purpose of this is to hopefully establish some kind of radius. I think the half-mile and the additional SUP, but it is to get ahead of a pattern that I've seen and hoping to Essentially get ahead of out in Schertz. I think there's a lot of area, especially getting closer towards I-10, that is starting to build out. And it's not to discourage development, it is to discourage one type of development that is, what's a good word? Just duplicating at every possible intersection, so.
Looking at this too, we have to look at Commissioner Outlaw so he doesn't have to get stuck on aviation for 3 hours. I mean, that's part of the thing with they're having with the building construction that's going on near Home Depot is to basically put it back in the city where we can shop within the city and not have to contend with 35 and contend with the nightmare that's there right now with the construction and even afterwards. It's a smart move for us to look at other types of businesses to enhance what we have, especially as we start to build and grow with these, especially on the south side, with all of the new homes. Where are they going to go shop? Can we stick something in there? The only thing I would consider as far as like a car wash or any kind of gas station was something like a destination, a Buc-ee's. If a Buc-ee's came in, Buc-ee's is a destination. They've got YouTube videos where people, they actually spend vacation money there. They will pull in it, they will sit in a hotel and just go to Buc-ee's, whatever. I mean, that's good for them. Something on the south side like a Trader Joe's is another destination location. That's one thing where economic development can look out and say, hey, let's drop a Trader Joe's in the area, or an Aldi's, something that's kind of a one-off weird thing where people want a destination to go to it. I mean, I actually went to the Aldi's up in Austin just so I could put my nickel so I could just to get my cart to walk around. I'm like, oh, and I get my nickel back. That's kind of awesome. So, I mean, I think that's what we're looking at with this is so we're not sitting here where every 5 feet we either got a gas station or a car wash or a combination. So I think that's a good idea to look at. Half-mile radius, I think 5 miles is a little overkill. I mean, good for them, but I think that's kind of ridiculous. Half mile is probably more appropriate, maybe even 3/4, but anything above that I think would just be would be hamstringing ourselves in long term. So that's my 2 cents.
And just to add to that, a car wash, what I'm talking about that is being developed is the Go Car Wash. It's going to have 2 people working. It's a tunnel you drive through with vacuums. There's a bunch up and down Pat Booker now. You see them just repeating themselves. It's not a destination. Like, you're not going to drive to the other side of San Antonio because someone has blue lights in the tunnel at their car wash versus the green lights at the tunnel of your car wash. Like what you're saying with like a Buc-ee's and things, like yes, it's not to discourage this type of development overall. It is to allow for additional things to be built other than the same thing over and over and over and over and over. So that's my bet.
I just wanted to add that I think it also speaks to being a little more intentional about what we want the city ultimately to look like and offer to the citizens of this community. So.
Because you look at like on Schertz South, they're building homes there, but there's no infrastructure as far as shopping's concerned. They've got to trek all the way to Cibolo, they've got to trek to 35, or go off Kitty Hawk to get food, or even go to base. I mean, this way we not only attract people into the city, but we maintain it, we increase the quality of life, and that's why looking as we continue to build more houses, I think we need more thoughtful on promoting commercial in those areas to give those people a solid backbone so it feels like their community. I mean, it's with 1518 and 78 being kind of like a cutoff between Schertz South and Schertz North, there could be some development there that could really enhance that area and promote it where we're not just seeing rooftop after rooftop, but we do have something in there that can offer them a higher quality of life and a better experience when they live in the city. And that could also draw more businesses in and increase property values over long term.
I have a question. Does the city go after businesses to try and draw them in? Or is it business owners coming to you saying, I'd like to open this type of business? Because if you buy a piece of property and you have a vision in mind, but and say it's a car wash, and you say, well, you can't build that there, but they bought that land with a purpose. So the idea is you come into the city first and say, I'm thinking about buying this land and this is what I want to put there. But what if it's the other way around? They have a piece of property they want to use for a specific reason, and then they're being told they can't do that. So that's one question. Then the other question was the first one is, do you guys go after businesses and say, we'd like to put a Trader Joe's here in Schertz? I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, I'm just curious.
So it is not the function of the city to recruit businesses. We don't go and say, we really think this is a good idea, we really think this is a bad idea. We just, basically, property owner comes in with an idea and we tell them, you know, we try to help them with their idea. If there's things in the code that says they can't do it, we let them know. You know, if there's a way to change that, we also let them know. But really what you're describing as, going out and looking for businesses is more of the function of the EDC, of the Economic Development Corporation. Yeah.
I'm just curious because, if we're saying, well, you can't build a car wash within a half mile or whatever, because you're wanting other types of businesses there, I understand. But if you have a person that has a piece of property and that's what they want to do there, and then we're going to tell them, no, you can't. I mean, I say that as a business owner, so.
Oh, no, and this is not to discourage people from having this type of business. My experience has been, it is a national chain owned by one person, and they have like 30 locations across a region. It's not, oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, it is not someone, I don't want to say it's not someone in your community who is like, oh, I'm grinding it out to buy this land and start a car wash. It is someone who, I've done my analysis, and this is our prime location, where can I put this and make this work as best for me as possible. I'm not sure next steps what we could do with this besides recommend that staff maybe take this to a UDC amendment or.
Yeah, I think if staff can explore a UDC amendment in regards to a dispersal ordinance for car washes.
Okay.
I think we can bring forward, we could do some further research and bring forward some options if that's what the Planning and Zoning Commission would like to do.
Do we need to do that as a motion, or?
For a
no,
workshop, nah, you don't need to do that. We
Okay.
can just.
There's no action on a workshop. Okay, it's right? We don't have this marked for actions. Yeah, it's just a discussion. Go ahead.
Have we had like a presentation from the Economic Development Corporation here in Schertz to talk about what they're doing intentionally?
Not to my knowledge since I've been here, but we could definitely make that happen. I'm sure Scott Wayman would love to come in here and chew your ear off.
I would love to hear from them.
Okay.
So, I've kind of sat here and honestly, I don't see a problem. Okay? I would ask, do you have any idea why a automated car wash is permitted by right in neighborhood services, but not a self-service?
I don't. That decision was made long before I got here.
And,
But if that's something you would like us to explore as well,
no,
we can do that.
it really, it's one of those things that I'm not sure it makes a lot of sense, other than maybe there's something negative about an unintended self-serve car wash. Can you put your map back up there again? So, trying to get my bearings here.
I think this guy right here is self-serve.
Okay, so yeah, he's been
That's
there
on Main
forever.
Street, right?
That's the one that's down there by the storage. Right? That's on 15,
Yep.
no, that's on Main Street.
Yeah, this is on Main Street right
See,
here.
there's another one, as you go down 1518, as you head out of town, there's one there by the storage yard.
That might be, the reason why that might not be on here is because that might
But
be outside the city.
anyway,
limits.
I look at this as a free market, kind of thing, that these folks, the latest one, is that Blue Wave? Is that the one that they just finished up there next to, up there next to, on 35?
Next to Discount Tire?
Yeah.
Yeah, big league.
Well, the history, Blue Wave originally wanted to go where QT is on 3009, okay? Part of being around too long is you know things like that, but that piece of property that they finally built on, in the, what are we coming up, this is 2020, so it's 36 years I've lived in Schertz. The only thing that's ever been on that piece of property is a Christmas tree lot at Christmas time, okay? And it's the same rationale that I applied when they wanted to rezone that sliver of land out there on 10. And, we all decided that that didn't fit with the comp plan, that, no, we need this kind of thing. And the fact is, it's been out there for decades with nothing. And along comes somebody that wants to build a car wash, and we're going to say, no, you can't do that, and it'll sit there for a couple more decades before somebody puts something on. And then what do they put on it? A Burger King? Another chicken place? Well, I know I'm getting a little sarcastic, but I tell people you can't throw a rock in this city without hitting a Mexican restaurant or a chicken place. So why aren't we concerned about, why don't we want to have dispersal ordinances about chicken restaurants or Mexican restaurants, okay? And then you've got typically, when you look at that cluster up there on 35, only one of those is a tunnel car wash. And what is that, wash tub, I think it is? The others are all attached to gas stations or something. And I'm really surprised that QT on Rips Crusher doesn't have a car wash. That's one of the things that typically comes with most of those convenience stores is a car wash. And that's a convenience for their customers, okay? Now, honestly, I haven't used the one up at the Valero on 35 since Go opened, okay? I typically use the Go car wash. Oh, and do you have the one there at Legacy Oaks in 35? The car wash that's attached to the gas station there? So, and again, I have seen 3 car washes go out of business. We had what's the lube place? The 5, whatever it's called there on 3009, that little building to the north of it, that 2-bay building, that was a car wash for years. And it went out of business, I think, between the wash tub and whatever the Go car wash originally was. I think they drove them out of business. And then you go up to Wiederstein and 35, adjacent to that new daycare right there on the corner. That was a car wash. And it seems to me there used to be one down somewhere in the area of the VFW that was a self-serve spray wash. So a lot of this, I have to assume that Blue Wave paid a pretty penny for that frontage lot up there. And, I like to assume that they did their research and they determined that they could make money by building a car wash there. And it's not like we're building these things in the middle of neighborhoods. These are off in our, really they're off in our commercial retail spots. So again, I don't really see a problem. But that's me. There are 6 of us sitting here tonight. So it might be, I don't think we need a motion, but I think a consensus as to whether or not we want these folks to look into this. And then there's all these things about, is it car washes in general? Is it standalone car washes? Do we include the ones that come with convenience stores with gas pumps? Do self-serve versus fully automated? A lot of different wrinkles there. So, but anyway, so what's the consensus? I know you.
I think it would be an encouragement and bring an item back, and if we requested is purely what I've seen in areas that are experiencing rapid development, so rapid growth in population. Larger supporting services that are going to support your neighborhood. It's car wash,
Yeah.
next to car wash, next to.
I mean, I hear you. I keep driving around and I keep hearing about gas shortages and the price of gas. Yet I keep driving around seeing these new gas stations going in. So anyway, so I know you'd like to have them do it. How about Judy, and what's your thoughts on it?
I'd like to see what EDC has to say. What is their vision of it? So are we kind of aligning with them? That's more important than, I think, if we talk to them, then we can come back to y'all with a thoughtful response instead of just some kind of knee-jerk reaction of half mile or, God forbid,
Well,
5 miles.
I think again, it's just my opinion. I'm not on EDC, but I don't think they really care they're after the bigger fish. And, I don't think they're out there recruiting gas stations. They're looking for manufacturing and distribution, and they don't even want to find a sit-down restaurant for me. That's just not on their radar. But I agree. I think if we could get EDC to come give us a presentation on their vision, their goals, their priorities, it might help us. But anyway, getting back to the car wash thing, is the consensus we want them to look at it, or would we just rather they not spend their time?
I mean, honestly, right now, I think as far as them looking at it and wasting their time, let's see what EDC has and kind of get their vision of what they've got going on.
Okay.
And then we can come back to staff and go, this is where they're looking at it, this is how we're looking at it. Where can we meet in the middle? Where can we find a consensus from both sides? So as we're proposing things, EDC is behind driving this, and we can give you guys something thoughtful instead of, well, I don't like it. And your response is, well, that's great, but whatever. I want to be able to give you a thoughtful reason as to why, and a thoughtful reason as to why spend your time and effort without, well, we don't have that right now because we need to be aligned with what EDC wants, what y'all are approving and what y'all are recommending, and what we're approving eventually to send to council for their final approval. So it's a more of a streamlined effect, so we have a clearer vision and we kind of understand more. So when homeowners come in and complain about crime, the idea of having the chiefs give a better, thoughtful answer, because it may be one of those things where it may just be a quick email and they don't give it a lot of thought long-term, or it may give them more pause that we ask them for. Either instead of just yes or no, a reason as to why yes or why no. It may give them more pause for clearance and clarity to kind of go, well, okay, yeah, and they may look at it a little differently. It's more of a complete holistic approach to things instead of just kind of piecemealing it, so we can be thoughtful, and the work that y'all are doing, what we're doing, and what everybody else in the city, so we can present it to council. It's more of a complete package, and it's more of an alignment, so council can see a clearer vision, and that's coming to them. I think this will be helpful for them in the long term. But I think the car wash right now, for y'all's sake, I wouldn't worry about it until we had a discussion with EDC, so we can kind of figure out where they're going. And then if we want to bring it back in, we can take a look at it and kind of, then we can ask y'all that question. I think it's a wait on this thing.
All right.
Okay. And I will say that it's a very real possibility that EDC does not have an opinion one way or the other about car washes.
Judy, what are your thoughts? Do we want to have them do this, or no? Okay. Patrick? With Clayton? Okay. Roger? Do you have a preference one way or the other?
On the car wash?
Well, whether or not we want staff to go out and start a proposed UDC.
Oh.
What'd you call this? A dispersal?
Dispersal ordinance.
Yeah.
There's also, if the radius dispersal ordinance is uncomfortable for the commission, there's also potential for staff to explore the permitted use table with specific use permits or something like that.
I personally think Schertz has enough car washes. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay.
So I wouldn't recommend
It
that.
sounds, once again, we're kind of split on, you know,
We could
And
have
again,
another workshop and bring some
yeah.
options in after we've talked to EDC.
I don't
Yeah.
know if.
However, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
I do think that we need to hear from the EDC. I am really interested in their vision for Schertz.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful in a lot of other areas as well. And I'm wondering if the Chamber of Commerce is another brain we could pick in terms of, you know, I don't know exactly if they have their ear to the ground in terms of market, what's hot in the business community, or, you know, maybe a call to, I'm not sure what Maggie's function is anymore over there, or their executive director, maybe just a phone call to them and see if they have any input. But, so, I think because we're split on this, I think the request is for you guys to look at it.
Yeah.
Maybe not a priority.
Sure.
Are you all right with that, Clayton?
I mean, this is totally talking about a long-term vision,
Yeah.
and I would hate for the long-term of Schertz.
And, you know, and maybe you could do a little more research in terms of what you might see the dispersal ordinance saying, you know, in terms of, as I said, do we treat all car washes the same, or is a convenience store with gas pumps car wash, is that different than a standalone, you know, like Blue Wave or Go? So before you know, rather than come back to, I don't know, however it works out for you guys.
Okay.
Okay? We good? All right, moving on. Item number 8, requests and announcements. Item A, request by commissioners to place items on a future P and Z agenda. Anybody? Okay, I just want to remind staff that elections need to be on the August. Okay. Because I need a vice, well, I say we need a vice chairman. So, all right, 8B, announcements. Anybody have anything?
Yeah. This is kind of cool. So over the past, it's July now, so 6 months, I had studied for the AICP exam, and I have recently passed it, and now a certified planner. So it's kind of a big deal in the planning world. But yeah, so thank you.
Well, congratulations. Anybody else? Announcements by city staff, you all have anything? Nothing? All right, item number 9, information in your current projects and city council status update are in your packet. Of course, that doesn't include last night's council meeting, which I meant to watch this morning, and I have not seen that either. But that looks like all the agenda, so it is, it is 8:17, and this meeting's adjourned. Emily, I have a quick question for you.